Okay. Hi everyone, this is SmithyQ from SmithyQ.com. I'm here to analyze a chess game. This one was posted on the chess.com forums. It was from, I hope I don't butcher this, Beta USA, and he was an 1800 player. He's playing a long-time game against a 1400 player, and in his own words, he suffered an embarrassing loss. So let's dig in. Let's take a look. Let's see what can happen. Let's see if we can help. And so we'll just jump right in. The opening was e4, e5, so we have the Italian game. He writes that he doesn't have a lot of experience here in the e4, e5 sets, but that's okay. Bishop e7, and then he played d4. So let's just back up. Has anyone made a mistake so far? No, of course not. We both developed, some pieces out. Maybe the bishop e7 is a tad bit more passive than it need to be, but it's fine, right? No mistakes. d4. Is d4 a mistake? No, of course not. Is it the best move? I don't know. Is it a good move? Yes. Here, in this position, white has, I would say, 3 candidate moves. Knight c3, castles, d4. Maybe you get an argument for c3 in here, right? They're all good, they're all playable, they'll all likely transpose at some point. So pick your favorite move, right? Just opening principles. All we want to do is develop our pieces, right? That's simple. d4. Then black didn't take. This is somewhat interesting. He plays g6. Much more common is to take on the in the center. Anyway, I'm starting now from this point. White has essentially 2 ways of trying to play this position. He either will want to advance the d5, like so, or he'll want to exchange at some point. These are the 2 options. It's going to depend on what type of game or what type of situation. Maybe that didn't sound right. Yeah, what type of game that you prefer playing? More open or more closed? And so if we just take a look at this, if you were to exchange, I believe you wrote this in your notes, right? We'll get a position like this, in which white has, I guess they'd call it a nibble, one of those smallest of small advantages. The position is open, there's some pressure on e5, this bishop is slightly misplaced, white's going to castle first, he's going to get a rook to the open file first, he's got easy development for his pieces. That said, black has no weaknesses. It's going to be a game. Maybe it won't be the most interesting game in the world, but it's a game. I have to say, if I were an 1800 rated player going up against a 1400, or if I'm going against a person much lower rated than me, this is the exact position I'd want to get into. Why? Because there's no tactics. It's very easy for black to become incredibly passive because he has no targets to attack. White's going to get slightly more active, and if you are the better player, that will eventually snowball. You will have winning chances. Especially, again, most 1400 players, most lower rated players, all they know how to do is attack. And so if you get into this queenless middle game position, I think this is exactly where you want to go to. But anyway, that's one option. The second option would be instead to advance with d5. And now the game's going to be turning more into something like the similar to the old Indian defense, or vaguely King's Indian-ish. The best move is probably knight b8 in all honesty. And then if we do this, we get c4, knight c3. We reach a position that is the just like the old Indian defense, but with an extra tempo. Let me show you what I mean. So if we look at the old Indian defense, it's actually d4. I'm assuming these are the moves, honestly. Okay, and if we just look at this, and then we look back at the move, back and forth, we can see that in this case we have an extra tempo. The bishop's on d3, overprotecting the e4 pawn. Things are great. So if we look back in this position, those are kind of the 2 options we have. Either to play d5, and we're going to likely enter into an old Indian position with an extra tempo, or we're going to get into an exchange, and we get into a queenless middle game where the better player is going to win. Those are the 2 general options here in this position. Which do you prefer? well, take your poison. You simply castle, which is fine. He plays knight f6, and now here, because of tactical considerations, you really need to think of one of those two options, either to exchange or to advance with d5. Just because, as you note, once you played rook e1, he's able to get bishop g4, and there is pressure. There's pressure on you, and you're going to have to make some sort of concession at this point. You ended up playing d5, which is fine. Anyway, if we just go back for a second, the move I liked was c3, and you had this line where you were worried about this, 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 and now, well, if you take with the queen, well, then he wins a pawn. So g takes f3. And you said this looks too weakening. But just look at this position for a second, because I think this is important. You mentioned that you have the open G file. Yeah, that's great. Maybe you can attack there later. But just look at this position. Before, your center was slightly weak, right? You had to worry to defend the e-pawn. That's why the rook was here. Well, now you got this pawn here. Your center is perfectly solid. There's no pressure on either of these two squares. Your center controls everything. Black has no light squared bishop. He had to give it up. Your bishop is probably the best piece in the game right now. Look at this diagonal, wide open, or this diagonal, wide open. Maybe it can eventually drop back here. Well, let me do that better. There we go. Then this diagonal, wide open. Or it can go here, and then here. And this, do you see these diagonals? It's incredibly open. This bishop is going to be a monster piece in this position, most likely. Look at black's bishop. It's stuck behind its own pawn. And the only thing black can do is either put the bishop here on g7, which is going to take like 85 moves, right? Because he'll have to castle, then move his rook. I'm just going to draw arrows everywhere, okay? Or he'll want to play d5. But playing d5 is very risky because his king's still stuck in the center, and you've got this rook on this right facing it, right? And if black doesn't play d5 right now, if say he castles, well, you're going to play knight c3. You've got complete control of d5 now, so fantastic. This bishop can come out anywhere. Your queen can go anywhere. You can play on the king side, the center. You can do anything in this position. I gotta learn how to turn my notifications off. This is ridiculous. Sorry. But then looking back, what can black do? What is black's plan? And I'm silent because I don't see it. I'm not sure what black can do. Yes, you're slightly weak over here, but how is he going to take advantage? How is he going to move his pieces over there? There really isn't a way. So, are these pawns weak? Yeah, they're kind of weak. But you've got a lot of play. And again, this is a position where if you are the stronger player, you're likely going to win because, well, black is going to do something silly, or he's going to be incredibly passive, and you're going to press him down. I would love to play this position as white. I don't know if it's better, it's probably equal, but this is a position I would like to play as white. So I think the idea of playing c3, back here, sorry. So after bishop g4, playing c3 deserves serious attention. Anyway, you play d5. We reached this position soon, castle, you played h3. You mentioned that it gave you some potential weaknesses. Don't worry about weaknesses right now. h3 is the best move, because he has to exchange, or we're going to get, he's going to drop on d4, right? Things are going to open up. And let's see what happened. Exchange, exchange, then he dropped back, which is, you said, was slightly unexpected. Doesn't matter. So I just want to look at this position right now. I'm going a little bit fast, so sorry, I want to get this all in. Because this is kind of it. This is the position, the move. Because here you played knight h2. Let's just come back here for a second. Let's just look at this position. Let's evaluate it. What do you think? Well, if we're to look at this, we look at both sides of castle. We got some pieces out. He's got 3 minor pieces. You've got 2 minor pieces and a rook. So development's equal. Time is equal. You've got a space advantage coming in here. More than that, let's look at the quality of the pieces. Okay, this bishop's okay. This bishop is like the most unhappy bishop of all time, right? It doesn't even have a legal move. This bishop's okay. It's not in the best square. This bishop is wide open. It can go anywhere. Your queen, it's got all sorts of action. His queen is stuck back here on the back rank. So you've got a definite space advantage, and you should be able to turn this into an activity advantage. You should get your initiative rolling. Now, where should you attack in this position? Well, there's the old rule, is that we should attack in the direction our pawn chains point, right? So we've got the center pawn chain, and so our center is pointing in this direction. So this tells us that our play should be going in this direction. So how do we do that? Well, you actually wrote down in your notes to this game, is that, yeah, we want to move this bishop somewhere. Yeah, oh, sorry. I'm really good at drawing arrows, it seems. So you move the bishop out of the way. We play c4, we play b4, we play c5 or b5, and we just advance pawns, we open a line, we got our rooks over there, everything's happy. That should be the plan. Instead, does that seem obvious? I hope it seems obvious, because the pawns are here, point over on this side. And look, he has no real pieces over here. This bishop isn't really defending. This bishop can't do anything. He doesn't have a knight. He's got one rook. We're going to open lines. We have something to attack. That's it. Does it make sense to attack the king side? Over here, well, he's got a knight. He's got a rook. He has no weaknesses. This bishop is there, so it's stopping any pins. I mean, it's not the happiest bishop, but it's there. This bishop is here as well. It can easily slide over and reinforce a weak spot, right? Whoops. Wow. Someday I'll learn how to draw arrows. So if we had to decide where to attack, where should it be? The queen side appears to be the logical choice, and that you played knight h2, which has a plan of playing f4 to open the f-file. But your rook isn't on the f-file anymore. It's over here on the e-file, protecting this pawn. And so are we going to really move castle, move the rook to the e5, just so we can open the f-file and then move the rook right back? Are we going to really spend 4 Tempi to do this? I'm going to make a prediction or a prognosis. Tell me if I'm wrong. But you're likely an attacking player, or given the choice, you would like to attack the king. Because when I was an 1800 player, I was an 1800 player for like a decade. It was ridiculous. No matter what I did, I couldn't improve. But anyway, I got to 1800 by the strength of my attacking skills. Is you just point me at the king, and then I'll launch a nuclear weapon, right? That's all I knew how to do. I got pretty good at it, but that was it. And if you put me in a position where I couldn't do that, well, I just try to do it anyway. And that's where I would end up losing. That's where I never made progress. So what happened here is in this game, in your notes, you told me, or you wrote, that you think the like a c2, c4 idea is better than knight h2, and you're absolutely right. But that tells me that you have this chess knowledge, you understand the position, but when you get into this game, all your practical skills are on attack. And so that's the only thing you're thinking about. All right? So that means that we need to, if I'm correct, is that you need to program yourself to not just think attack, to look at these other things as well. Because if the only thing you think of is attack, then that's the only thing you will do, even when you don't have the position for it. All right? And that plays out in this game. Because then, okay, he plays Queen c8, you move the bishop back. This is actually a great move. You asked whether you should be worried about any sacrifices here. And the short answer is no. You could play any move, like, I don't know, this. Right? And if he tries to do a sacrifice, well, you bring the queen out, he has to retreat, you're up a piece. You can even, once the queen moves, you can even move your king over to the center and now use the open g-file. You know, thanks, black. Now you got a real attack on the king, because you've got open lines now, right? So, in general, if black is attacking with one piece, his queen, his only threat is maybe to get the knight in. Maybe, right? That's it. So that's not something you have to worry about. If this were a bullet game, maybe that might work. But this is what, 45-minute game? No worries. No worries. Anyway, bishop f1. The reason this is a good move is because, well, yes, it's protecting everything, and it lets you play c4, c5, going on the queen side, where you should be going. The game continued, c6, c4, knight e8. Black is going to try and do his plan now, because again, his pawn chain points this direction, so that's where he's attacking. He's going to play f5. Hey, look, I just drew arrows, no problem. And then you played f4. So again, let's look at this. Is that there's some confusion here in these last few moves. Is you move the knight away, so you play f4, but then you play c4, right? So you're expanding on the queen side, and then you're coming back over here. Now, if we know from hypermodern chess, right, openings like the Alekhines defense or the King's Indian defense, is in where if white has a big center and it's not properly supported by pieces, it can be destroyed very quickly. Now let's look at your pieces right now. Actually, let's not, because it's kind of a horror show, is that all of your pieces are on the very edge. Every single one, right? This is, like, your bishops are kind of active because they're long range. Like, your pieces are terrible. Now, are black's pieces much better? You could argue no, but are there any weaknesses around black's king? No, none at all. Are there weaknesses around yours? Yes. Right? These dark squares, when you didn't play f4, does this weakness here, or anything around here, none of it matters. But once you expand, right, because you're thinking attack, even though you can't do anything on the f-file, even if it does open, is now this is all weak. And look, bishop h4 sometime in the near future could be devastating, right? Because then you have to move this rook to not a happy spot. And black gains time, bringing his pieces closer into the attack, which he eventually wants to do, right? Well, what should you play instead of f4? I would have simply played bishop e3, develop the bishop. Again, think queenside. Queenside. This knight probably has to come back to f3 at some point, but that's okay. You were up a tempo at the beginning compared to a normal old Indian defense anyway, right? Black played, sorry. I'm jumping ahead. After f4, black played f5, which is absolutely the right move. You said you're expecting f6, which I would love it if I were white and my opponent played f6. I'm going to play f5. He's got no attack. He's completely balled up. Again, this is a position I would love to play. I now have a permanent space advantage. That gives me enough time to untangle my pieces. I'm happy. If he starts trying to play g6, I can play g4. I have the space advantage. Look, his pieces are going to be terrible now. f5 is definitely the right move. Because as we actually see, is then you liquidate the center. And already, I'd much rather be black. Anyway, so after take, and then, oh dear, take. So you've won a pawn. Excellent. But then let's look 2 more moves. Bishop d6, rook e1. And so your center has collapsed. You're up a pawn. Excellent. Material is good. You're up a pawn. But, again, all of your pieces are on the back rank, on mostly the original squares, or on the edge. Your pieces do nothing. Black has a wonderful bishop. This bishop is wonderful. Open f-file is wide open for his rook. The knight is going to come to f6, and then from there, it can either go to e4, if possible, or something like this. Well, if the queen moves, right? g3. Oh, my goodness. Aha! All right? Black has full compensation for his pawn, right? And the question is sort of, and then again, if we go back to the very beginning, let's see. Somewhere, I don't even remember where it was. Ah, right here. I mentioned that in this position, what is black's plan? What can black do? And there really isn't anything. He has to wait for white to come at him. Right? He doesn't have really anything active to do. And if he does try and do something active, it's very easy for it to blow up in his face. It's the same thing right here. Sorry. What is white's plan? What can you do with your pieces? Honestly, the only thing you can do is hang on for dear life and hope your extra pawn matters in the endgame. That's it. But black's piece activity is so strong, he's almost certainly going to win back at least one of the pawns, if not more. Right? So this whole strategy of trying to open the center, of playing c4 and f4, moving our pieces away, and then opening the position, tells us that it was too much. Right? We need to have our pieces here. Because that's what happens the rest of this game. I'll just go over this quickly. So, right, he plays queen c7, you play knight f3, which is, I guess, the best move, knight f6, but then you played knight d4, and again, right, you're moving this knight. How many moves has this knight made? It went here, then it went here, then it went back, then it's here. Well, your whole army is sitting on the back, right? It's, remember, what did we tell beginners? We want to develop our pieces. And so here, well, this knight is fine. This is your best piece. Let's not move it. Let's get our other pieces. Let's get bishop e3 in here. Right? Let's close off some of these dark squares. Maybe we can retreat to f2 if necessary. We're blocking the f-file. Like, again, your position is uncomfortable. Yes, but now this rook can come over, or we can move the queen and bring the rook to d1. At least we're doing something. By bringing our knight to d4, actually, let's look at what happens in a second here. Black plays bishop c5 when he should have played bishop h2, and after king h1, knight e4, where either knight f2 or knight g3 is going to be absolutely devastating. So anyway, doesn't matter. You played king h1, you should have played bishop e3. That's right, let's look at something. Black advanced, knight e4, you're forced to sacrifice the exchange, yep. Knight e6. And then you took the rook. Can I show you something? Something about the value of time. Let's look at this position. Okay? Let's look at your pieces. Look at black's pieces. Okay? Now look here. So from, let's see, where is it? Here to here. Okay. What's happened? Your knight has vanished, whereas black's queen and bishop are on better squares, and his rook's on open file. This is time. This is Tempi. Is that over the last, 5 moves, 6 moves, the only thing you've done is move your knight, right? Okay, you moved your king out of check. Okay, sure. You lost your rook, I suppose. You exchanged it. And then you exchanged your only good piece, your knight. All right? That knight had moved like 18 times. Sure, it took a rook. It won back the exchange, but you've got absolutely nothing to defend yourself against the black onslaught. Look back here. What is your best piece? It's the e6 knight, right? That is your only piece, right? Everything else is asleep. And so what you need to do, what you should be thinking is, how can you complement that knight, right? Yeah, you could win the rook, but then you've got nothing. You're completely defenseless, as the rest of the game shows, right? Now, honestly, your position it's very bad at this point, okay? Exchanging doesn't help, though, right? It just makes it worse. And so we got to get this bishop into the game somehow. Where? I don't know. Bishop d2 at least. Maybe bring it to c3. Get the rook over. You can play queen c1 and then try and interpose on this diagonal. Like, at least it's something, right? But when you exchanged, you had nothing. And then after, well, you played a3 and you had nothing left. Let's just look at the game here, right? Both sides missed some stuff. Doesn't matter. I mean, black can play just about anything. And here's where you resigned. So, if I could come back, right, if we just look at this, what was your main mistake, right? If I wanted to say that. And I would say the mistake was, up to here, okay, maybe there's some inaccuracies, doesn't really matter. It was this. It was you pursued the wrong plan for this position. And you know what the right plan is because you wrote it in your notes, that playing on the queen side might seem better. And yeah, it seems a heck of a lot better. It seems like the best possible thing you could do. That's where your pawns, chain points. You got to move the bishop, that's fine. Then your pawns go rolling. What's black going to do? He's going to take like 85 moves to eventually get an f-pawn break. It doesn't matter. With your bishop back here on f1, you're fully protected. You're going to be great. You're fine. All right? You know what to do. But you went on this pseudo-attacking plan. And you wasted a lot of time with your knight, eventually, right? Because you open the position here. Look at this. You want a pawn. And then what do you do afterwards? You mostly just move your knight around, taking up 18 tempi, right? Just to exchange itself. And that's when you were defenseless. And there was nothing. And let's see, what's the best move here? It's probably just, what, queen g3? And then, oh, yeah, shoot. That's going to be, like, mate right away. Yeah. So that's how poor your position was. Now, it didn't have to be that way, right? You could have had a very good, you did have a good position. It was just you pursued the wrong plan. And so, again, I guess I'm projecting a little bit, is I was an attacking player, and when I was able to start using some more positional skills to think about it, not just in terms of, you know, throwing bombs at the king, just, you know, f4, f5, push Harry, right, h4, h5, is when I started thinking about the positional side of things, right? When I forced myself to play on the queen side every game, whether it mattered or not, so I learned when it was good to play on the queen side, right? When attacks were justified, when they weren't. And when I did that, that's what eventually helped push me over the 1800 barrier, and now my online rating is like it's 2100 or something, right? So that's it. And so that's going to be something you may need to think about. Maybe I'm completely wrong. If I am, well, then I'm sorry. I wasted a little bit of your time, but there you go. Okay? So I hope that helped. I hope that was useful. Again, I'm SmithyQ. SmithyQ.com. I'm also on chess.com. I'm everywhere, basically. I love talking about chess. If you ever want to talk, you know, visit my blog or you can message me. Hope you found that useful. And yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.